Hi, I'm Shahid Hamid, and welcome to this edition of Urban Vibe. With me to discuss issues related to uh, the newspaper business, and particularly his newspaper, is Charles Washington, publisher of the Portland Observer, and Jake Thomas, web editor and news reporter of the Portland Observer. And we like to talk about some issues really kind of facing the newspaper business and recent changes that has occurred with the Portland Observer. And I guess, Charles, that'd be my first question to you. Let's talk about some of the new changes, most notably the new masthead and the whole new look of the Portland Observer.
Well, we have decided that the broadsheet was the old Portland Observer. We're celebrating our 40th year. So with that, we talked about doing this modular tabloid format for a while, but my good friend and colleague Jake, he's inspired me, and he keeps me really on the go for the young ideas, and this is one we've really had for a long time, but I think I got to give him some credit for helping me push it through, because he did some really great work with this concept. But it's designed to create a new audience. One of the concerns we have to start building our demographics and recognizing younger people, and we're wanting them to become more part of the Portland Observer. So it's a work in progress, but I'm excited about it, and the community seems to be happy about it as well.
What's going to be different? Because it seems like you made some the different areas inside of the newspaper. Like you have a local news section. It just kind of look like it's formatted different.
What we're trying to do, we're trying to again grab a younger audience, and there's some studies that make reference to the interest that they have in the tabloid, and it should be noted that young people aren't really reading the paper much anymore. So we're making every effort we can to try to, show some more bells and whistles and some more interesting articles. Our concept is to start engaging this newspaper with our web page. We want to marry them together, and in conjunction with that, whatever is in our paper, we'd like to also be part of our website. So we want to give the young audience a greater perspective of the Portland Observer, and they're doing more electronic reading now than anything else. Young people have, and they kind of like this ADHD approach to newspapers. They quickly read them and to online. People go online and they're quickly at any different page, any different site. So this is quicker reading for the public, and so I think they'll enjoy it.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of folks are going online now. A lot of folks are not reading newspapers as much as they used to. A lot of newspapers, the Oregonian, cutting back.
Yeah.
You seem to be hanging in there. What do you attribute to? What do you attribute that?
Well, Portland has a need for these services, and I take pride in what we do at work. And there's a lot of people who do that too. If we lose this particular part of this community, then we have lost quite a bit, a segment of our infrastructure. And I believe the newspaper is important for our community. The Oregonian and some of the other publications don't really have the intimate relationship that we have with our community. I'm proud to say that we have a newspaper that people feel partially connected to. It's like their paper. And so I think it's important for us to keep this project going. It's costly, not to say it's not cheap. But some of my competitors have decided that they want to go online and report the news in that fashion. And that might be fine, but for some of our readers, especially the long-time readers, they want something tangible.
You mentioned long-time readers, and I think a lot of us take pride in the fact that the Portland Observer is the oldest black newspaper in the state, and you chose to introduce your new format, your new masthead, um, in format primarily with Barack Obama,
Yes.
talking about the first black president Mark's eventful year. And we were talking a moment ago about that
Headline.
that headline, the
Yeah.
first black president. And you were saying that, well, and just like you were saying a moment ago about how we feel connected to this newspaper.
Right.
And tell us about your views on that.
Well, you know, we are the oldest minority published newspaper. And I say that because I don't know if black is as important as us reporting the news as it might be. I know that early on that African Americans needed a voice because there wasn't one for them. But now I think this world has changed so dramatically, and if the masses can elect an African American president, then we're going to look at the news a little differently than we used to. Portland is a great city, and I like to represent it through its diversity. That's how I work, and that's who we are really as a community. So really, I don't like to approach it as an ethnic paper as much as I do a community-based newspaper, because this news comes directly from the relationships to what happens on a day-to-day basis. So you really can't put it in a color scheme of sorts. If you look carefully, sometimes you look at the Oregonian, and you might find Obama on the front page. You might find, you could find Brandon Roy on the front page. You might find one of our community leaders on the front page, and it's not called a black newspaper. We make news, and people make news, and our community makes news, and so that's what we really try to do. Although we were Afrocentric to some extreme, we still have a strong relationship with the reality of our community, and it's important to be honest when you report the news. I don't think news can be referenced by color. It's referenced by events. That's what our approach is.
Just kind of digressing a little bit because I think this is interesting. The very fact that he was the first black president probably had something to do with you placing that story in. But do you think black people, because you was talking about him being elected by the majority of folks, and we know 90% of African Americans voted for him. Will that maybe tend to make you hesitant on reporting about any of his shortcomings, or
you know, I think all
do you
presidents.
think we have black people have a right to expect something from him, or he's just the president of all the people?
Those are really good questions. I don't know if I'm really the person to really be able to answer those kinds of questions. But from my personal perspective, Obama presidency is a historical presidency.
Right.
This is the first time we've had a person of color become president. If we're looking to have him reference only black issues, then that won't represent the mainstay of his tenure as a president, and that won't make him great. His greatness will come how he leads the country as opposed to lead one group of individuals. You know, 4 years is not a long time. You know, Bush gave him a mop to clean up Katrina, and that's just not enough time. He's going to need a lot longer than that. But I do believe that his leadership will go down in history. It's a really difficult time for America right now, and it's transcended through our economy, and it's affected everyone in America. I think black people are hoping that he will set a precedence for the next person who could be a woman, who could possibly be a person of other ethnicities, who could also lead the country. So if we're looking for him to do something particularly great, he's already done it. And I think his tenure as president will definitely be one of the most difficult presidencies that America's ever had.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. I just it just seems like he's in a precarious kind of position because he is the first African American president, and at the same time he's the president of all of America.
He is, and a very powerful man in the world, right, as we know it.
But sometimes, at the same time, when we look at the rate of African Americans incarcerated, the unemployment situation in African American communities, and the staggering numbers and so forth. It just causes one to ask, you know, are we going to ask him eventually some hard questions?
I think we have to ask him hard questions.
Yeah.
We're going to have to ask some hard questions, but there's hard questions being asked already.
Right.
You know, and you know, we, as a nation of African Americans, have aspired to greatness. There are some serious disparities in our communities, and I'm sure he has that on his mind. I would never think that he wouldn't. You know, if you look at his family, he understands the relationships to his own family. He understands what it is to be a black man. And as I said before, you know, he has this short tenure. We don't know how long, maybe he'll run again, but so much has been left on the table for us by other presidents. So many disparities, health, education, a variety of things, housing. Unemployment is just one of those things that I'm sure he must give some consideration to, especially with all the stimulus he's trying to create. But he's going to have to make some positions on certain issues that have been long overdue, that need to be addressed. And that means through some segments of not just our community, but some other communities too, Native American communities. They have some issues that they'd probably like the president to address from a different perspective than the other presidents and some of the other minority communities. So, you know, I think that as a president, he'll definitely look at the relationship that he has as a man, as an African American, but I don't think the presidency allows him to recognize one relationship over another.
Over another. That's going to be the tightrope that he walks in. Well, we know that that the Portland Observer is strongly interested in cultural diversity, and I want to take this opportunity to welcome Jake Thomas, web editor and news reporter. And Jake, perhaps you can tell us what the web editor, what does that bring to the Portland Observer? What are you working on? What do you want to do with that?
Well, the nature of news has just changed so dramatically with, you know, the creation of the internet, and people just get their news differently. It used to be the case that people would read the daily paper over breakfast or their afternoon paper in the evening. But things are much different now. It's now people get their news by maybe just visiting a couple different sites at work. They might check out the New York Times. They might check out a couple other weekly papers. They might check out the Oregonian. And with the website, with the Portland Observer, we're always having fresh content up there every single day. We're in the 24-hour news cycle every day. So in a way, the PortlandObserver.com is like a daily paper. So we want to make that site a website that people click on when they're getting their news. Where they might, whatever that might be. People might check out Facebook and Twitter and whatever sites they visit, but we want them to visit the Portland Observer so that they, as a news source, so they know what's going on in Oregon and in Portland and nationally.
How's that going to work in with your reporter, with your duties as a reporter?
As a reporter, well, that's the big question. I mean the paper, the physical print paper that comes out every Wednesday. I mean that's our bread and butter. That's the thing that funds the paper. That's where most of our revenue comes from. So that thing. So I suppose one of the things with the website I want to do is do no harm to that, and sort of meld the two together. So I want to have a couple good feature stories in the paper every week that you don't see on the website, so people still pick up the paper. But I also want to have some content from the 24-hour news cycle that we're collecting on the website, and then work that into the paper as well.
Chuck, what kind of other directions do you have planned? You have some events planned coming up? Or?
Well, we do have some events planned. This year, we hope to be a more visible corporation, and partnering with some of our good friends from the city and maybe some from the state, and also from our local churches. We'd like to set up some spiritual opportunities for some of our clergy, and we're hoping to do a gospel picnic. And it's one of those things that is about community and well-wished community, talked to a few ministers who are interested in being part of that event. And what it is, just an old-fashioned picnic, really much, on a Sunday, hopefully on a nice, warm Sunday. We're going to have some music and events of that nature. But it's hopefully we're going to try to have about several ministers out and just talk a little bit about the Spirituality Church. We'd like to invite the Muslim community out as well and get a variety of, get people back in the place where they can have some more hope. So it's just one of those kind of fun events. I think we had them when we were kids. We had more of those kinds of picnics, and it's one of those things that we would like to bring to the community. So it's going to be a lot of fun, but some spirituality associated with it. We're also looking to do a young leadership conference. That conference is designed to replace old men like me and you. We have to put it back.
That's right.
You ain't gonna do this for doing mine. But it's important, I think, for especially our minority community, to start finding some young people to replace us, so that we continue the policies and the traditions that we so desperately need in our community. You know, I think it's so important for our leadership community and to try to find within themselves someone who they find will be really a good fit for what they've done. You know, people don't live forever. And all these great programs and organizations really need to have young people part of them. And I subscribe to young people. I think, you know, they're getting a wonderful education. They have great ideas. I think it's time for us to start having this opportunity, taking an opportunity to get them to be part of the new part of leadership. We don't have any African Americans in the city council. And we need to start looking for those young people who would like to take Portland to this 21st century and bring the ideas that could make this city great. I say this because, excuse me, I think it's really important for young people to be part and not be excluded. And I think my goal is to have this leadership conference probably in September. I want to talk to some good friends of mine, Roy J for one, and see if he's up with the idea of supporting the concept of the Young Leadership Conference.
Roy J, when he did this clean slate
yeah.
program and so forth.
Yeah, he's a great friend of mine. But I look for his leadership to help me understand that he's obviously, you know, has a lot of skill in relationships with his organization, the chamber. So we'll look to hopefully have him become part of that.
One thing I think that really has characterized you, you have a sort of somewhat of an open door policy in the sense of, I remember I came to you at one point and was telling that the inmates at OSP wanted to do some writing or send them a letter to the editor and so forth, or maybe even do a column, and you were really receptive to that.
Absolutely.
And I think what you're talking about with the youth now is equally, if not more important, to maybe begin to identify some of the youth in the community who could maybe write some articles and share their views with the public.
Absolutely. You know, there are so many resources we're not using, and there's a great wealth of resources in the state system. We will invite anyone to be part of the Portland Observer. There's some people made some mistakes, and yeah, I get a lot of letters from people in jail, and they think that I'm not an attorney. I listen to quite a few I listen to all the letters. I read them all. Listen to what they have to say. And they're really intelligent people in there.
Yeah.
I mean, they made some mistakes, and I welcome them to be part of the Portland Observer, and anyone who wants to write for the paper, actually. But I really, I push young leadership all the time, and I'll give anyone an opportunity to be a part of the Portland Observer. It is an open door policy. sometimes it gets me in trouble. But we're a public part of the Portland, public part of Portland.
And Jake, maybe you can chime in on this. What do you think about this whole issue of gentrification? You know, is that going to lose your base? Is that going to affect your bases, or are you going to do things to reach out to the broader community to emphasize cultural diversity?
That's a really good question.
No, that is a great question. It's I mean, Northeast Portland's just changed so dramatically over the last I don't know how many years, and we need to change with it to stay relevant. And we're trying to do that with the paper. I mean, we have. I mean, this week's, I'll do a plug for this week's paper. We have an article about the North Portland Greenway Trail. We have a group of citizen activists who are trying to get an extension of the Springwater Corridor Trail from southeast up there. And in the article, I made clear that they're trying to get it for everybody in North Portland, that this is going to be a space that's going to benefit all sorts of communities up there. So I think I really do applaud Chuck's efforts with the papers to sort of change with the times, because if we stay stagnant, it's going to I mean, it's going to change. I mean, we definitely need to stay in touch with the old community up there, with with people with long-time residents up there. I mean, definitely want to stay in touch with them. Want to keep them along with the ride, but we definitely need to change with the times.
It's difficult for us, you know, because most of our community move into the east part of Portland and the surrounding metropolitan area. So, you know, it's a really struggle with our circulation. But again, though, the news reports itself, and what we'd like to see is more interest from the business communities with the Portland Observer from Mississippi and Alberta, and let the community know that their doors are friendly to be opened. You know, that's been one of the biggest frustrations. I think one of the biggest problems I've had with the new people is that they haven't reached out, but maybe we haven't either. So this is our attempt to try to reach out to them. We want to make it a friendly newspaper. You can't really control the population. You know, like I said, if Bill Clinton could move into Harlem, you know, this is a universal situation in America now. Many major cities have started to redevelop again, and they're bringing the white community that's coming in. It's a challenge for us to.
It's a challenge. Then what do you plan on doing? Because, like you mentioned, there's a lot of businesses right there on Alberta and MLK. Is that kind of a exercise and bakery, and if we look at Mississippi, we can see a tremendous amount of growth. If you look at Alberta, there's a tremendous amount of growth. Do you have any plans on? Other than that, I know, as Jake says, we have to expand, and we're looking at specific areas like the green and so forth. You have any other kind of plans to reach out to that portion?
I've got to make an effort personally myself. We have to get a team that's going to do some more public relations and start talking about Alberta. You know, it's not like we don't frequent some of those businesses, but you know, we didn't get off to a good start, in my opinion, because I was frustrated with the earlier times when that street was given no consideration by the city, and we had a really difficult time organizing efforts to make it part of our community. There were no loans, and now even with the liquor license, they have there used to be a problem with the liquor on Alberta at one particular store. And they gave this gentleman a lot of flack for, you know, selling alcohol, fortified alcohol. But now in Mississippi, I mean not Mississippi, but Alberta, every establishment has liquor. Every establishment, and in a lot of ways, it fuels the interest, in my opinion. It's not all bad, but it is giving way to a community that really, I don't think, has a really connection with ours. Last Thursday, is it last Thursday?
Last Thursday, yeah.
Last Thursday can be out of control sometimes, you know. And they made a lot of modifications for people who drink and ride bikes. Drinking while riding bikes now is something of a big concern. Jake and I were talking about it a couple of days ago. But, You know, Alberta will be a work in progress for us. I'd like to see us be part of Mississippi as well. Those are all old communities, and it's interesting to see how they just flourished over the last several years with people not just necessarily from our community, but from all over Portland. And I don't know if they're all friendly because some don't necessarily live here, but that doesn't mean that we can't begin our working relationship. And I should say this, I don't think gentrification is all bad, but as long as they understand the passion of Portland and what we're really trying to do as a community, and understand that there are people who have been there a lot longer than they have, not necessarily just black either. You know, that we've had a community that's been one we've known for many years, and it would be nice to have a building relationship. I do have some friends on Alberta, so you know, we're going to work, as I said earlier with Jake, as a work in progress, try to reintroduce ourselves to this new community.
Like any good project is a work in progress. Yeah. It's always developing, always evolving.
Right.
Well, what I want to ask you now something about the philosophy, if you will, of the Portland Observer, and it just could be my perception, but are you going to still be, or have you moved away from, I can speak to you as a reporter and you as a publisher, accountability? I noticed that in a lot of respects, the Observer is a friendly newspaper. It's a feel-good newspaper.
Yeah.
And are we going to still, like you was talking about, for instance, the liquor license situation, and how maybe the African American community that's left, how much consideration they're going to be getting? So it's that whole issue about accountability. Is that going to be a emphasis of the newspaper?
You know, that's a really good question. We want to create accountability. It's a paper. I'm committed to diversity. I think it's really important for the news to be uplifting. It doesn't always have to be in the place where it's giving you this bad day, or I hate to, there's enough bad information out here already. If you want me to be part of it, I can do that too. But I think there's a lot of room for us to, you know, build a community as opposed to just dissect it. And the news can be dissecting sometimes if it's too, in my opinion, if it's too involved with issues that don't have any solutions. There's many stories that talk about issues that continue to be the same story. If you look carefully enough, it evolves and revolves, and you'll be listening to some of the same things. I think we really need to make people accountable, though, when there is injustice, and that's one of the reasons why I'm in this business, because if somebody's out in Portland, you know, I think that Portland it really does a good job in all of its infrastructure to try to reckon with some of the wrong things, sometimes not fast enough, but you know, we have to make them accountable. But it's not just the paper that makes them accountable, it's the community that makes them accountable. And when we do that, I think it helps us build a better bridge to, you know, writing a good story. You know, we have to have this place where we have to have the support of a community when there are injustices.
Just to piggyback on that,
Sure.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think accountability journalism is so important, and I think the Portland Observer is in a great position to do some of that work. And we've done a couple stories that I think have that I hope have accomplished that. We had a story a little while ago about the Trailblazers, how they wanted to bring Cordish. This really controversial company. They still want to do this and bring it to the Rose Quarter, and we've also done I think some really good reporting on the Columbia River crossing. Yep. How this project has really neglected a lot of issues of environmental justice in Northeast Portland that you haven't really seen anywhere else. And I hope to do more of that. But also that kind of work requires a lot of research, requires a lot of work, and we are a small outfit. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to. That's something really important, and I hope we do more of in the future.
Revenue is a big part of this whole part of investigative work, and you know, early on when my mother was here, may she rest in peace, we had very few dollars to continue with this project, and over the years we've done fairly well, but it's a very expensive project, you know, and it costs money for a lot of variety of stories. We do the best we can. I think Jake's
No, I think
very
it's
very
great for
talented,
that, yeah.
but there's always room for improvement, and that's what we're attempting to do every single day, every day.
And I guess that's why I was just talking about the philosophy of the newspaper, because granted you do have limited resources, but there are issues that occasionally will call for,
Absolutely.
you know, some observation. I mean,
Absolutely.
this is what the whole newspaper, freedom of the press, was born in that type of environment.
Absolutely. It would be helpful if sometimes we need information from our community too. You know, if there's something that is important to them, and we like the scoop as well as anyone else. You know, it's really important for us to have a relationship with the people in our community who will bring it to our attention, make us accountable. That's really important. And I welcome it.
When we talk about the community and accountability, obviously you'd have to look at various political issues. I mean, you just can't kind of get away from some, not necessarily. I know that you're not a politician, you're a newspaper, but at the same time, issues do arise. Even for an example, Margaret Carter recently was elected by the community to represent the community in a hard-fought battle. And you go back, like you say, you and I go back long enough to remember how critical that was, or how important it was.
Absolutely.
And for her to be the first elected black representative.
Very important.
State of very, very important.
Very important.
Recently, she resigned, and her seat was taken over by Chip Shields. And that's not to say Chip has been a good steward in the community in terms of, we know he initiated Better People organization to help those incarcerated and those who's recently released and reentry and so forth. And but at the same time, the community worked very hard to get that seat. Is that important, or again about the accountability or the newspaper? Is that
first? Let me say, Chip's done a great job, and you know, we known Chip over the last several years, and I think it goes back to the other question we talked about earlier, finding young people to, you know, when the change happens, that you start making references to our infrastructures and making sure we continue the policies that are most important to our community. And there are many. Margaret's one, obviously, but there are others too that is really essential for us to try to, you know, keep the mainstay of what we've collected together.
Some kind of continuity.
Absolutely, and we have to remind ourselves of that. You know, we're not putting the efforts as I hope we would to understand where we need to be in the next 10 years. And by the way, there's a census coming up, and we should be really concerned about that census as a community and how we're part of that census. But you know, to speak to the reality is that we must start making bridgeways for young people who understand the policies of our community and what our needs and our goals are. We have to have future goals as opposed to just these the current ones. We have to look forward in the future. And that makes a big difference, you know, when it comes to policy making. We've got to have people reflect our voice. And, you know, when you live in a white political culture, you have to be concerned about it. It may be all well intended in some cases, but some things they will just inherently miss. And that's when the issues arise. This is an important time for Portland, I think, to try to recognize this is a great city. And many great things are happening in the city, but you need diversity leadership to understand the balance of how you make things work for everybody. I think the black unemployment is much greater than people recognize, especially here in Oregon. Of course, we have one of the highest in the nation. I'm a bit concerned about that, you know, where we're going to be in another year or so, because I don't see the economy moving as well as fast as they thought. But you know, you need people to understand those
dynamics.
Dynamics,
Absolutely.
and so that we can have a sense of how we're going to make some change, and in a positive way, hopefully. as I said, it's a great city, but it's going to need strong leadership.
And I think questions like the unemployment, again, the accountability piece, are so important. And having space in the newspaper. Like you used to have a Spanish section, I think,
Yeah,
a
we did.
Latino section.
We did.
Do we still?
We have a section called El Observador de Portland, and it's to reference the diversity that I boast in our newspaper. It's the section that we use periodically when there's issues that might be important to our brothers and sisters who are Latinos. But again, this Portland's become a city of many diverse cultures, and that was our attempt, and it still is our attempt to try to keep the community abreast to having relationships. Seeing that we're here together, it's an effort, one that we're making. Sometimes I see some of the similarities between different ethnic groups, and we have to we set a balance where we can collectively ask those who are in the leadership roles to be a little bit more conscientious, in a fair way, for any culture for that matter. But we have not omitted it. We don't use it every week. It's just when we have news, I think that's important for the Spanish community.
Any other kind of technical projects that you're working on, Jake, or any kind of?
It's just
some television
just
stuff,
keeping up with
hopefully.
what's going on with the internet and social networking sites. That's a job in itself. But I would mention that we are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and whatever other social networking sites we got to be on. I am going to set up a YouTube account and a Blip TV account. So we can put stuff like this up that might be relevant to what we're doing. I know that Portland Community Media does a great job of providing coverage of community meetings, and I try to do that for the website. So I'm going to try to do more of that.
What's your passion, Jake, in terms of you're in this business, you're working now with the Portland Observer, you're working in the community. What's your passion now? What do you want to do? What would you like to see happen?
I think journalism is one of the most sacred responsibilities in democratic society, and with the Portland Observer, I'm just hoping we can use this to tell untold stories that you're not going to see anywhere else. You're not going to see in any other media outlet. That's what I really want to see come out of the Observer, and I think because of its unique position in Portland, and in North Portland and Northeast Portland, I think we're in a great position to do that, and I really would like to do that, just tell untold stories.
Oh, I agree with Jake. We talked many times over our editorial meetings, and what we're looking for, stories that people have forgotten about. The challenges are there all the time, but there's some great stories out there that really need to be told, and Jake's done a wonderful job. I really appreciate his hard work. He's one of the finest professionals I've ever worked with. He's done a wonderful job.
Well, we look forward to a lot of things coming out of the Portland Observer, and I know with your emphasis on youth and cultural diversity and connecting with the pastors in the community, and looking forward to your gospel. You have a gospel show and
picnic.
Picnic.
Gospel
Picnic.
Yes.
Right. We'll have a gospel picnic, and we're looking forward to that. So hopefully you'll be coming back and updating us from time to time, hopefully, on things that you're doing. You got any kind of last things you'd like to leave with the community? Any?
I just want to tell them that I think you're a wonderful moderator.
Yes.
They need to watch your show all the time.
All the time.
Not me on it, but you.
Okay.
You're the star.
All right. Jake, you got anything else you'd like to share, or just leave?
Not really. Just PortlandObserver.com. Read it every day. Pick up the paper.
Pick up the paper.
Yeah.
And we really should, because this is a really excellent paper. As Jake mentioned, they're having stories about green, and they're going green, and of course the new masthead and the new look of the Portland Observer with our president, on it. We want you to always pick up the Portland Observer. And you really do a good job on distribution.
Thank
I
you.
must say that.
Thank you.
Because
Thank you very
I
much.
might go down City Hall. I see the paper at schools,
Yes.
the Safeways, in the community. Really, really do a good job.
Mark, my brother, he does a wonderful job.
Really, really does a great job.
He does.
Does a good
Great
job.
job, and thank you. So for Urban Vibe, I'm Shahid Ahmed, along with Charles Washington, publisher of the Portland Observer, and Jake Thomas, web editor and news reporter for the Portland Observer. And we want to thank you, gentlemen, for taking time out of your schedule to come
Thank you.
and talk with us. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Until next time, peace. We out.